Welcome to the Hollywood Scholar. I'm Judd Morgan, and the comic book industry, the television industry, and Hollywood as a whole have been obsessed with this idea of race and gender swapping characters, whether or not they're prominent characters or background characters. They're constantly trying to take away white roles and give them to other people. And in and of itself, that's not necessarily a big deal, except for the motivation behind it. It's all about diversity and inclusion, and they refuse to actually make original black characters, for example, and try to make them equals to the white characters. Because, as young Ripa always says, these people do not see value in originally diverse characters. They only see value in originally white characters, so they have to take that value and apply it to this new character just because they think that's the only reason or only way that people will be interested in these new products and these new propaganda-filled products that they're peddling. And that is absolutely not the case. So many people love diverse characters. They're very popular in and of themselves when they're not being preachy. But the idea that, you have to take it from the whites to be strong and powerful is just an insane concept that is just getting far too out of hand and is causing a lot of issues for Hollywood as a whole. Because a lot of people like the Vikings Valhalla show on Netflix, I know dozens and dozens of people, at least in my own personal circle, who said, I'm not going to watch it because they race swapped a historical figure. Even history is getting race and gender swapped. If history can't even be accurate to what it truly was, then why does anything else matter? If we can just rewrite history to our own whim, there's nothing left. The very foundation of our society falls apart when history is not accurate because we need to learn from history's mistakes. But if you can pencil whip it, make it whatever you want, there's no point to anything. There's no point to storytelling, and everything just falls apart. But someone at Image Comics decided in and of himself that, it's actually better this way. The original sin was that white people existed. So I got this article here from Bounding into Comics that breaks down Erik Larsen's comments about why so many white characters was worse than race and gender swapping. But let's jump right into it. Image Comics founder Erik Larsen says the original sin at Marvel and DC was making every character straight and white, which is absolutely not the fucking case. There are dozens and dozens of examples of diverse characters from back in the day. Namor, not straight, not white. There's Nordstar, also not straight. There's Storm, she was one of the original X-Men and arguably one of the most important X-Men, definitely within the top few. And I could go a Blade. Blade made so much money for Marvel Comics that it saved Marvel from going bankrupt in the 90s. There are so many examples of original white characters. So this idea that every character was straight and white is absolutely not the fucking case. And to say that it is disingenuous and really gaslighting the people who are reading these comments. Because, yeah, if that's not even true, then why should we listen to the rest of your statements that are built off this idea that every character was straight and white? And you're just devaluing those characters that came before. Falcon from Marvel, he was in the comics way back in the day, not a sidekick. He was his own fully fledged character, and he was a popular character, relatively speaking. So, yeah, you're taking away the value from him. Black Panther was around for a long time, taking away the value from him, acting like his cultural importance isn't that effective, and that really just devalues a lot of the diverse characters that you say that you're fighting for, because it breaks the narrative of modern day to reference old movies and old characters and old comics that actually did what these people profess to doing. Like when Black Panther came out, the movie, they're like, oh, it's the first black superhero movie ever. Look at us, we're so brave and stunning. Ignoring that Blade saved their fucking company back in the 90s. So, yeah, when it's against the narrative, you just ignore it and just say, oh, it's all been white and straight up till now. It's not the case, and it was never the case. So, acting like it is doesn't help your cause at all. But let's get further into it. Argues against changing established characters as a fix. Fucking hell, this guy's an idiot. In his latest take on the ongoing issue of race swapping in comic books, an issue which he seems to flip-flop on every time he speaks, that's not surprising because a lot of these woke people are very inconsistent in and of themselves and just kind of go wherever the woke wind is blowing, and yeah, you're going to make enemies if you keep flip-flopping like that. Erik Larsen had claimed that the original sin of Marvel DC was making every character straight and white, but argued against the concept of race and sexuality swapping as a counter. Taking to Twitter on April 9th, Larsen abruptly declared to his followers the original sin, before rhetorically adding, now that there's a huge push for representation, they've been caught with their pants down. But how can they fix the problem? Make original diverse characters, or fucking adapt the ones that you've had for fucking decades. You've had diverse characters for decades. Just refuse to use them because it doesn't fit your narrative. With the movies, it's easy. Just cast your film with a diverse group and ignore the comments and the fans on Twitter because nobody cares. He bizarrely and dismissively argued. In the comments, it's more difficult because you can't just swap the races of existing characters. I mean, they do it, though. They do. I mean, after Will Smith was cast as Deadshot, the comics following that, he was black. Following that, same thing with the not Barry Allen, Wally West from the Flash TV show. After that, he was really only ever black. So comic books, they do it. Just act like it's a multiverse, or just like, oh, it was always this way. Or there's so many different mechanisms that they use to justify these race and gender swaps in the comics and the movies. So I don't get what he's saying there. Rejecting the trend seen in recent years with such characters as Kid Flash, Master of the Universe, Andrea, and the near entire cast of Marvel's Eternals. Oh, fuck the Eternals. I don't like being reminded of that piece of shit. The ideal solution would be create a whole mess of new characters which are diverse and then use those characters in comics and movies. Alright, so I have to give him respect for that. It would be best to do that. Or use what you already have. But he's going to contradict this in a second here. But creators don't want to give Marvel and DC their great ideas, so that's not going to work. What great ideas? The creators that Marvel and DC are hiring don't have any great ideas. Their best ideas are, ooh, let's make Sue Storm gay, and that's as far as they think. And so yeah, these creators don't have great ideas, so that's not really making any sense. Instead, they'll do things like have characters inherit the role from a white character, which pisses off the fans of the original characters and only seems like a temporary change. Man, this guy is flip-flopping in these comics alone because, yeah, I agree with that. It's only temporary and doesn't really make that much of a difference in the end. Use what you have or make new shit. Not a hard concept, but these creators aren't intelligent enough to actually do that. Inevitably, the original will return, and that will leave their replacement out in the cold. See, it's not a great option. It's tokenizing them and then thrown away when they're no longer of use. So, yeah, he has some partially good comments here. He can, if they're savvy, they can transition their replacement character in a new role, but largely it's pretty messy and leaves readers on all sides pissed off. Yeah, because if you transition them into a new role, it makes the whole thing pointless. Still leaves them out in the cold. Just make that character original to begin with. Don't build it off of another character to start with. It's kind of odd. I mean, starting out as a sidekick is fine, but replacing that character and then becoming your own character, that's a weird transition to make. Responding to a fan who replied to his thread, I can't wrap my head around the idea of needing a hero to be just like you in every manner to be happy. Larson includes, it doesn't even have to be that, but even if a title never includes anything but white characters in this day and age, I would think something's going on with that creator. Okay, I'm not sure. This man is a little bit all over the place. And yeah, sometimes things are going to be all white, which is fine. And sometimes things are going to be all black, which is fine. The perfect example is Black Panther. Those comic books, at least when they're in Wakanda, make sense to be 100% black. Absolutely. Same thing with, Lord of the Rings. It's based pretty much in England 100%. At least the fantasized version of it. So it should be 100% white or nearly so. It's okay. It's okay in both directions. Rules need to be applied equally across all races, or that is the definition of racism and bigotry. And that's what these people don't understand. They're like, oh, racism goes only one way. No, you need to apply rules across everyone to be not racist, to be fair and equal. Curiously, just prior to this accusation, Larson responded to a Brazilian fan who asserted, real comic book fans don't care about color of skin or ethnic background. They care with character, stories, etc. Yes, exactly, because anyone who just says, oh, this one looks like me, I like this one, is a narcissistic, superficial person. But if it's like, hey, this story, the drive, this character struggles, that's what I love about this character, because he can endure through anything or something like that. That's when you really connect to a character and fall in love with them and want to know more and more and more. A character are their actions and their trials and tribulations. They are not what they look like most of the time. That's too hard for a lot of these creators. That's too hard for a lot of these woke people. It's too complicated. It's just, ooh, pretty me, it's me. It's so narcissistic. Larson said, understand that you aren't every fan. Your experience is not universal. It's mostly universal because, yeah, comic book sales used to be in the millions. Now they're in the, thousands, hundreds of thousands if they're lucky, yeah, that makes it almost universal. And of course, there's going to be people who aren't in that sphere, but that's the same in every genre, every industry, and every aspect of creative endeavors. Is you're not going to satisfy everyone. That's why you have a target audience. Why would they target the smallest percentage of their audience and lose money hand over fist? It doesn't make sense, but that's what comic book and really Hollywood as a whole has decided to do. It's foolish to assume that everybody feels the same way that you do. Many readers like having someone that looks like them exist in the comics that they read. Yeah, not a whole lot of people actually care to that degree. Or the sales of modern day comic books would reflect that because of how much they're pushing that type of stuff. Larson would later add, again without a hint of irony, that he was not a fan of characters who only stick to is their racial or sexual identity. That's just lazy, he said. That's all these characters that you're talking about, Larson. Holy fuck. This guy flip-flops more than a girl in college. As noted above, despite Larson's recent... Yeah, so apparently he just keeps fucking going, man. Alright, so yeah, he keeps going back and forth a lot. He can't seem to be consistent. A lot of these characters that he's saying are lazy are the very characters in which he's, saying that should be done. So, yeah, race and gender swap, usually not a good thing. Sometimes it can be okay in very rare occasions, and more with movies than in comic books, because you have a lot of control over the comic books that you don't in movies. So, yeah, I don't agree with any of this. Make new characters, use the diverse characters you have, and don't attack your fans, especially at a time when comic books are at their lowest selling in nearly all of their history. They're very fucking low right now, and that would be a sign that, readers don't like what you're doing. But these people aren't smart enough to put that two and two together. Just like Larson isn't, smart enough to realize that he's contradicting himself hand over fist in nearly everything that he says. But anyway, that's all I have for today. I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Please like, share, and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video. Anon. If you like what I do here and want to see good, compelling stories that Hollywood will no longer give you, check out my book series, Odyssey of a Phoenix, a mythological epic about philosophy, morality, and modern-day mental illness issues. Books 1, Down in Flames, and Book 2, Apocalypse Then, currently on sale. Book 3, Kill the Dark, coming soon.